You hear it all the time. Why didn't QA catch this bug? But here's the thing, they probably actually did. So today we're going to be spotlighting one of the most essential and one of the most misunderstood departments in video game development, quality assurance, also known as QA. Hello everyone, I'm Piers Duplock, producer and consultant across 30 different titles in the games industry across 15 years. And at the start of my career, I was actually in quality assurance. So today I'm going to be answering the question, what do QA actually do? How do they find bugs? And why does everybody underestimate and misunderstand what QA does? So let's jump straight in. So what does QA actually mean? So QA stands for quality assurance, but it's not just about testing the game. QA analysts are also problem spotters, they're pattern seekers, and they guard the workflow for how the game's meant to go as well. So their job is actually to find bugs, hopefully before players do, reproduce them consistently, log detailed error reports for developers so they can go ahead and fix it, and verify that bugs are fixed without causing any chain reaction problems. They're one of the departments, much like production, where they don't build the game, but they play it relentlessly to see that everything works and everything works together as well. Absolutely everything. So to understand what QA does, let's break down a typical day in the life of a QA. So they'll playtest specific features. Maybe a feature just dropped that day from the development team. So you've got to put pressure on that. See what that feature acts like under different conditions. You're going to try and break the game on purpose. You're spamming buttons, clipping into geometry, destructive testing, as we like to call it. Going to be logging bugs for anything that you do see. And this can be like, hey, a cape clips with a character model, or it can be, I fell out of the world. Anything between those needs detailed reports, screenshots, reproduction steps, and severity rankings across the whole report. Then you've also got to communicate with the developers about that issue as well. They might have questions. Like, what were you doing at this time? Like, where were you? Like, what was going on in the rest of the game? You have to memorize all of that stuff. Once those bugs have been fixed, you have to go back to them and try them again, which is why the reproduction steps are also important for not just for the developers, but also for yourself. You've got to go back and do these things again to verify the bugs. This is called regression testing. You also have to test these bugs on different platforms. For instance, if a game is shipping across Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and PC, which is very common these days, a QA tester has to test across all these different platforms to make sure that bug doesn't show up on any of them. Unfortunately for me and thousands of other QA testers out there, you're not just playing these games for fun, you are testing methodically across checklists, test cases, and feature matrices throughout the entire day. So you might be thinking at this stage, that sounds like a lot for one day. That's a lot to do. So there are breakdowns that we can do between the different types of QA. Some bigger companies will have whole departments dedicated to these breakdowns. So let's jump into the different departments you might find. The first is functional QA. So this is how the game functions. So this is more about your gameplay, your UI, maybe your progression mechanics, stuff like that. Like, does the game work as intended? Then there's compliance QA. Does the game meet the platform rules for Xbox, for PlayStation, for Switch, all those different certification types? Then there's localization QA. Are all the strings translated in game? Is all the voiceover translated? Is there any cultural issues between different regions of the world, for instance? You might have a performance QA department testing frame rate, memory issues, optimization across the entire game. If your game has a multiplayer component, you might have an online QA department testing multiplayer, testing matchmaking, testing server stability. Very important for games these days. If you're lucky enough, you might have automation QA, or SDET as they used to be called, that can write scripts or use tools to run repetitive tests over and over again. There's so many little niches in such a complex department here, and big studios might separate these departments out. For instance, when I was at Codemasters, we did have a functional department. We did have an online department. I was part of the online, and I moved into compliance, for instance. There are multiple departments there. If you're an indie, maybe you just have one or two people that can kind of do a little bit of all of these. But also, you might use an outsourced QA partner who would definitely have access to all of these separate departments. You kind of pick which one you want at time. All right, let's chat a little bit more about the job. And if I haven't made it sound hard enough already, I'm going to make it sound a little bit harder. Some bugs happen in the game are incredibly rare. They will only happen in very certain conditions. For instance, there could be a bug that pops up after 20 hours of gameplay. Guess who's getting to 20 hours of gameplay to find that one bug, to then restart that save and get to 20 hours of gameplay again, to then reproduce that bug? That's right, it's a QA tester. Some bugs are completely invisible as well. They don't necessarily crash the game, but they could corrupt a save file. They could cause an issue multiple hours down the line. You have to know when that trigger started to find the cause for that as well. Again, very, very tough. Some bugs are platform specific. That's why platform specific testing is so important. If you're launching a game on the consoles and on phones, imagine how different those are, like how complex the testing between those two is going to be. And some bugs are just not reproducible. You can spend your whole day at 10 a.m. you find a bug. Okay, great. I found a bug. I'm going to reproduce it. You could spend your whole day trying to reproduce that bug for it not to happen again. You still have to write a report. You have to be like, hey, I saw this thing once. Here's all the detail I can do. And I tried to reproduce it in this way and it didn't work. I tried to reproduce it that way and it didn't work. And you can go through all those steps trying to help the developers as much as possible, but sometimes it's literally just a one and done. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, so if QA are so skilled and they work so hard, why do games still launch with bugs? It's a great question, and there's a ton of answers for you. The first answer is usually time pressure, honestly. There's only so much time for dedicated fixing before a game's got to go out. Game's got to go out the door, right? So QA only have the time for the feature to come into the game and start working to the time that the game comes out. And that can be months, that can be 2 months. If a feature comes in the alpha stage, then you may be 3 months away from launch of that. You have to find everything, and not everything can get fixed in that time. There is also prioritization. For instance, some low impact bugs will just get marked as won't fix. We're not going to spend the time to do that. We've got higher priority items to work on. There could be last minute changes. There's always last minute changes, honestly. So QA signed off a build, it's ready to go, signed off a feature, all working. And then some sneaky little code gets in there, changes a few things, and new bugs appear, and QA doesn't have the time to react. It's already gone out the door. Platform updates also fall into that category as well. For instance, every time your Xbox updates, every time your PlayStation updates, it can introduce instability into the games. Usually it doesn't. Usually this gets tested as well by Sony's QA or Microsoft's QA, but sometimes it can, and there's just nothing you can do about it rather than react. And finally, there's just the scale of games now. If you think about the games that are coming out, especially from AAA studios, you're thinking Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed, they're massive games now. I think Bethesda with Starfield, massive game. There's just not enough time to test absolutely everything in that game. So stuff might fall through the cracks. Overall, though, QA does almost always find the bug, but they can't guarantee it getting fixed. One final section from you here, from somebody who did it for a long time, is to think of QA as a communication department, not just a testing department. This will be useful if you work in the game industry with QA departments, or if you're thinking about joining one yourself, because not a lot of people think of QA as a communication role. They think of it as a testing role. You write a report, you send it off, done. But what it actually is a bridge between the developers and the soon-to-be players of the game. QA need to write really clear and useful bug reports, otherwise the developers are going to really struggle fixing the bugs you're putting in. You need to be able to communicate and collaborate with these programmers, designers, and artists to make the game as best it's going to be. You can't just throw stuff at them and expect them to work it out. You have to work with them, and you have to learn to communicate in suggestions rather than complaints. In QA, it can be very easy to be negative. This doesn't work. That doesn't work. This is broken. You have to suggest things of like, oh, we could make this better by. That's very important language. It's very important communication skill for a QA to learn. All right, let's wrap it up there. Let's remember that QA isn't about catching every bug. It's about catching the ones that matter most. And next time you see a glitch, just remember that probably a QA has also seen that and it was deprioritized, or there wasn't enough time to fix it, or something like that. So let's give it up for the unsung heroes of game development. I hope you learned something today. And if you did, please drop a like or a comment. I really, really appreciate that. And let me know what your favorite QA win stories were. Do you know of any in your favorite games? Let me know that as well. And I'll catch you in the next video.